Good morning, Trump's family. Welcome back to my channel. Hope you having a great weekend and God bless you. Alright, without further ado, let's get into the news this Saturday morning. Now, Robert Barnes was talking about Trump. Potentially, the context for this was that Trump will potentially announce his candidacy before the midterms, which Barnes thinks is an excellent strategy. Because at one level, it doesn't matter what Trump does, because the red wave that's rising is just so huge. It's so immense. So there's nothing that Democrats really can do to stop this red wave. J6 hasn't worked. Overturning Roe hasn't worked. Dems are doing everything they can to try to find an issue that's giving them some momentum, and it's not happening. They're trying to make Trump into the bad guy isn't going to work, for heaven's sakes. I don't know if you've seen this, the latest Trafalgar poll that just came out, head-to-head matchup between Trump and Biden. Trump is leading by 5 points, 48-43. And that fits with an Emerson poll that shows Biden losing to Trump by 3. So we're getting all these polls coming. And remember, these are aggregate polls. So these are not state-by-state electoral polls, which are the ones you really want to focus on, where even in the aggregate, Trump and Biden could be evenly split. Or Biden could be up by 3, but Trump is clobbering him at the Electoral College level, because he's beating him in Ohio and Wisconsin and Iowa and Michigan and Pennsylvania. And no, these polls by Trafalgar, these are polls that include the coastal elite populations of California and all New England. I mean, this is amazing stuff. These are aggregate polls, and Trump is clobbering Biden. So Barnes' argument is that if Trump announces his candidacy before the midterms, it's not going to affect the red wave in the least. And Trump could go into the 2024 campaign on the high, taking credit for the massive wins among populists like J.D. Vance and Doug Mastriano. And Blake Masters all across the nation. And Alex Jones certainly agreed with that assessment for sure. Alright, so Alex Jones is all like, cool, this is great. So who's gonna be Trump's running mate? And Barnes said that he's got inside info that has already been decided, it's a done deal. And Trump's running mate is Ron DeSantis. It's the dream ticket, Trump-DeSantis 2024. And again, there's a fascinating rationale for this. DeSantis knows that Trump can only run one term, right? He's going to be fulfilling his second term as constitutionally limited. So with just that, DeSantis is going to be a radically unique vice president. He'll be able in many respects to be a kind of CO president. He'll be put in charge of implementing a massive ultra-mega agenda for the nation, which we're going to talk about in a bit from this Axios report. They're panicking over the ultra-mega agenda that Trump already is already putting into place. Remember, he's been running a shadow government. Now even CNN has admitted that he has been running a shadow government now since 2021. This is already in place to go fully in effect on January 2025. Now Axios is reporting that Trump and the ultra-MAGA GOP are going to be literally going full animal on the deep state. In a way that's not happened in a century. You're gonna absolutely love it. So I'm getting atomizer. So the Sanders will be seen as already a kind of executive in chief. And he'll be more likely than any other vice president, I think, in our nation's history, to secure 2 consecutive terms. It's very hard after 2 terms with one president, for the vice president to go on and secure another 2 terms. Very. George Herbert Walker Bush was only able to eke out 1 term. It's hard after an administration that's been in power for 12 straight years. DeSantis would be running for his second term, after only 8 straight years of a single administration, Trump serving 4 and DeSantis serving 4 in his first term, so he would be poised to easily win re-election. And while we'll have 12 full years of ultra-mega rule over the nation, which Steve Bannon of course is arguing will serve the foundation for an ultra-mega dominance for the next 100 years. Right. You guys know that? I think some of you know what Bannon is appealing to, what is banned, and appealing to when he says that ultra-MAGA is gonna rule for the next 100 years. He's appealing to something called fourth turning theory, right? I know a lot of you know that comes up in some of the questions that I get often. The fourth turning it's a cyclical theory on how history moves and predictable patterns based on generations. So the 4 and Steve Bannon is a huge proponent of this. The fourth turning is the notion that history basically moves in generational waves, right? Marked by relatively predictable changes every 20 years or so, corresponding to the next generation coming of age en masse as it were passing their 18th birthday, right, entering into adulthood. So every 20 years, and what the theory argues is that the end of every fourth cycle of this generational pattern about every 80 years, 80 to 100 years, right, there's a massive societal and political and cultural crisis. Sound familiar? That ushers in a new political order and the restarting of the next wave of cycles. So this is why Bannon often says that MAGA-loving patriots are going to be ruling for the next 100 years. We're in a tumultuous fourth generational cycle, the upheaval of which will usher in a new political paradigm for the next successive 4 generations for the next 80 to 100 years. And then there'll be another political paradigm to replace that in their own crisis and the like. So according to Bannon, the current liberal global order, right, you heard Biden's economic advisor talking about it, the liberal world order that we're supposedly defending via Ukraine. The liberal world order began in 1946. After the end of World War II, that massive crisis, world crisis ushered in a new global paradigm that we're approaching the 80-ish year mark with. And so now, according to the cyclical theory, now things are predictably shifting, with Ultra MAGA coming out as the new paradigm that will rule for the next 80 to 100 year. So anyway, that's Bunden's take it. So according to Barnes, the agreement has already been made. It's a Trump-DeSantis 2024 ticket. It's a dream ticket. It's going to absolutely unify the Republican Party. It's going to radically attract independents who've abandoned Biden. Biden is getting his lowest poll numbers. I mean, aside from Republicans, obviously, Ben is getting his lowest numbers from independents. He's only pulling around 19% among independents, which means he's unelectable. I mean, right, if you've lost Republicans, and you've lost independents, you're unelectable. So this is why the New York Times right now holding an article here by Michelle Goldberg Berg, the New York Times has come out and basically told Biden he needs to step aside. He cannot win 2024. I mean, I couldn't when I first saw this July 11th, I could not believe it. When I saw this, the New York Times itself is telling sleep. To me, if you can't ride a bike, you can't govern a nation. Okay. Now, I've been arguing that all of this negative press, I've been arguing this now for the last several months, all this negative press on Biden, questioning his health, particularly his cognitive health, his electability and all that. All this press focusing on which Democrat could replace Biden in 2024. All of this, these articles aren't so much descriptive, as they are prescriptive, right? In other words, these articles are written, of course by ultra-leftists disguised as journalists. They're telling the Democrats that they need to find someone else. Right. They're not describing events, they're dictating them. They're dictating the events. The lamestream media is prescribing what the Democrats need to do, and they need to get rid of Biden. Even the Times are saying this now. So Biden has lost independents, and he's lost Latinos. Latinos continue to abandon the Democrats in droves. I got a new poll here. I don't know if you've been following this election. This is a House election for New York District 3. And it's amazing. It's been held by Democrats forever, while at least for the last decade or so, because of redistricting and so forth. It's become very, very blue. It's about to turn red. It's about to flip red. And it's flipping red via a Latino candidate, fellow by the name of George Santos. And the latest internal poll that just came out, Santos is ahead of his Democrat opponent by 11 points by double digits. So he's leading the Democrat by double digits in a district that's been solid blue in New York for over a decade. And it's about to get flipped by another hardcore, Latino, ultra-mega Republican. I mean, this is amazing stuff. And of course, a DeSantis presidency would solidify that shift among Latinos to the Republican Party. I think a DeSantis vice presidency would do that. And that would be that. I mean, if you think about it, with DeSantis coming in via Trump in 2024, that's that the Democrat coalition effectively unravels, Latinos leave en masse. You already have white working class leaving en masse. The Labor Foundation was so important to the creation of the New Deal coalition 1930s. So they've left. Latinos have left. I mean, it's over. They're done. Independents are leaving, and they'll be destined to be a minority party for decades, provided that the GOP remains true to the ultra-mega America First agenda. They start embracing the nonsense, the silliness of the rhino neocon, they're dead meat. And I think more and more they'll recognize that more and more obviously, after 2022 and 2024. That's for sure. So what is that agenda? And that's where we're getting to our Axios article. What is this agenda, this national? And I would argue, indeed, international, the internationalizing of the nationalist right. What is this political and economic and cultural agenda that promises to lay the foundation for a rule that will last throughout the rest of the 21st century? If this fourth turning cyclical theory has anything to say about it, that's exactly what these leftist journalists over at Axios are absolutely panicking over. They are panicking over what they're calling this as the title of a radical plan for Trump's second term. This is an amazing report based on 3 months of investigative journalism, talking to some of the closest aides to Trump in his inside circle in the shadow government that's going on right now, as well as panicked Democrats and what they're seeing and what they're hearing about what Trump has planned for his second term. Alright, so let's see what the return of President Trump has in store for us in terms of Trump's second term. Now, according to this article by Axios, at the heart of what Trump has planned for his second term is implementing an executive order known as Schedule F. Now, again, I can't see you guys, I don't have the chat on. But how many people know what Schedule FF as in Frank is all about? This is an executive order that he already signed it when it went into force in October of 2020. It was one of his last executive orders. And it got a lot of press when it came out. The press totally panicked over it. But obviously it got lost in all the chaos following November 3rd. What Schedule F does is it legally reassigns federal workers, so these are your bureaucrats in DC comprise what we call the swamp and particularly the deep state, federal workers who are the ones who've been embedded in DC for the last decades, and are the ones who really run the nation in the end, as we all found out right. They're the ultra-leftist activists who control DC, they radically influence policy, they're protected by the intelligence agencies, as well as make up many of those agencies. Right? What Schedule F does that Biden of course got rid of and that Trump would bring back? What Schedule F does is it legally reassigns these bureaucrats as what are called Schedule F employees. We in effect strips away all of their employment protections. We all know it's virtually impossible to fire a government bureaucrat. Well, that's precisely what this executive order would allow Trump to do. He would reassign these bureaucrats under a new legally recognized employment code that allows for mass firings. So pundits predicted that Trump would this executive order if he won a second term in November 2020. Pundits were already panicking that Trump would end up firing literally tens of thousands of deep state bureaucrats. And this possibility alone had reportedly devastatingly chilling effects on government employees throughout the bureaucracy. A second term, Trump is their worst nightmare, because not only would Trump fire tens of thousands, these ultra-left bureaucrats, but he would replace them with loyal ultra-mega patriots who would guarantee America First populism governing the nation for the foreseeable future. And to that end Trump, according to this Axios report here, Trump has already begun to enlist solid conservative organizations who are charged with recruiting these ultra-MAGA replacements for all of these bureaucrats. Again, for Trump, it's not enough to simply this isn't libertarianism, right? It's not enough to simply get rid of the tens of thousands of deep state bureaucrats because obviously what can happen is something could go wrong, another, Democrats not to get in, and then they'll just go and replace them all with Democrat loyalists, as they've been doing now for decades. Trump believes you don't just fire the bureaucrats, you've got to transform the deep state, you've got to put in a kind of massive ultra-maggot immune system inside the deep state to prevent ultra-leftist from ever getting back in power. And that's what these conservative organizations are already being tasked to do in terms of recruiting the most faithful ultra-MAGA loyalists to occupy those positions of power. So these are groups like the Center for Renewing America, the America First Policy Institute and the Conservative Partnership Institute. So these are all very loyal pro-Trump organizations, conservative organizations that are recruiting as we speak, apparently, according to this report, people that Trump could use to plug into the deep state to provide a kind of ultra-mega immune system to prevent it from ever going leftist again. Now, according to this Axios report, and again, I underlined it took over 3 months to prepare this report. They talked with over dozens and dozens of those closest to Trump as well as Democrats who were absolutely freaking out over the very real potential for Trump's second term. As a matter of fact, There was a bill that got passed in the House that would prevent this executive order from ever being implemented, but it doesn't look like it's gonna have any chance passing the Senate. Now, according to this report, Trump is totally and completely done with rhinos and establishment guys like Bill Barr and Mike Pence. And Mitch McConnell. He's done. Trump considers all those guys the enemy at this point. They betrayed him. They clearly betrayed him. And he knows it. And he's prepared to go full animal on the administrative state and take down the permanent bureaucracy that governs the swamp. Now, of course, we'll see. But that was a major theme. In this report, Trump is assembling a team of ultra-MAGA warriors that are prepared to take over DC once and for all. Sources close to the president have confirmed that he's going to go after the national security apparatus. They're going to clean house, that's the words they're using in the intelligence community and State Department. They're going to target every single woke general at the Defense Department by milli, and they're gonna remove the top lawyers or top layers, I should say, of the Justice Department and the FBI. Again, according to this report, as well, Jared Kushner is out. He's no longer part of Trump's inner political circle. Same with Ivanka, they're both out, they're no longer part of Trump's political operation. Thank God for that. Kushner should never been there in the first place. So obviously, we'll keep an eye on a very close eye on how things develop here, but so far the takeaway from all this is it looks like a Trump-DeSantis dream team is a go. It's already been agreed to. And that Trump's second term promises to make his first term look pale by comparison and establish an ultra-mega dominance that could rule way beyond DeSantis as to follow up terms and extend well into the end of the century. It's pretty amazing stuff. Over to you guys. Thanks for being here, folks. Big hug. Ciao.